All right, everybody, how we doing? How we doing? Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everyone? What is going on? Y'all doing okay? So leakers just lied about pretty much everything that happened in the chapter until the very end when the Raws came out. Is that I actually saw that there's going to be no spoilers this week. I saw that announced towards the beginning of the week, and I was like, okay. Then when I did check, because I just want to, need to see for the video, the spoilers did line up with what we got. JRD Gomo, thanks for joining the Yonko tier. Thanks for joining the Yonko tier. Make sure to check out the podcast that comes out every week alongside the Tuesday videos. And Electric Kid 8463, thank you for upgrading your membership to the Yonko tier. I hope you enjoy the podcast that comes out every week as well. Heads up, this Tuesday we will have a video. We will have a video. We'll have a video this Tuesday, and then there will be. I have to take 1 week off the week of the 8th, so there's not gonna be a video on 2 Tuesdays from now on the 9th. There's not gonna be a video then. Good flashback, but it's randomly placed. I think it will. I still believe its placement will make more sense when we get through it. Yeah, I am early. I'm I'm free. I'm sometimes early. Tom Tom, Morge, nothing wrong with this chapter. I don't think this was a good one to be before break week. Lol. Yeah, that was the thing. That was what threw me, which is because again, I was gassing up. Before we got the chapter, I said in last week's chapter review, chapter stream that hey, let's try. Like, I believe this will be a good flashback. We probably just need to give it a little bit of time. And if Oda's choosing to interrupt the flow this badly, there's probably a good reason. And again, just trusting the way that Oda's done this the last two arcs, I think he's been pretty consistently good with it. So I'm trusting that. But that's in the big picture thing. Like that's in the big picture view. If we zoom into just like what's happening right now this week, like in our weekly reading experience, I'm like, damn, this was not a good time to do like because the way it happened, right? Like we got set of chapters, right? Exciting stuff, Emu versus Loki, break, okay? So you're already putting things on break, right? So we got to wait a week before this whole Emu Loki Straw Hats versus Holy Knights things continues, right? And then Oda comes back and drops two chapters. Both chapters are kind of just like I guess the boring setup part of Brooks. Boring is a not correct word, but the relatively less exciting setup sections of like not emu of the Brook flashback, right? So we get two of those chapters, and at the very least, you'd expect the third one to kind of give us something like at least give us a little preview of like, oh, what's the cool stuff going to be in this flashback, right? You want to give us a little bit of a cliffhanger, even something like it ends with fucking Garling showing up or something. I guess this is not during Garling's time, is it? No, but someone fucking Gorosei showing up or something simple, right? To give us a little inkling of where this might be going, keep us hooked. But I think it's strange to do exciting stuff, then 1 week break, then come back with two chapters that are totally separate, that are the what are probably going to be the weakest chapters of Brooks flashback, and then do another break. Normally Oda would do three chapters in a row, and I think three would give him enough time to give us something juicy to look at. Mordry, you watching Game 7 tomorrow? Yeah, I think this is so fucked because I think I don't want to talk about NBA too much, but it's hard not to. Like, for those of you who don't know, right now we're getting Game 7, so Game 7s are relatively rare. Like, Game 7 is basically the furthest an NBA playoff series can go. We're getting a Game 7 of what most people might consider to be the NBA Finals. It's technically not the finals, it's technically the semifinals, for those of you who are not NBA fans. But the two teams playing in the semifinals are so good that it's very unlikely that they go on to lose the finals. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. The Thunder almost lost last year to the fucking Pacers, who were like, what, an eight? Like, it was an extremely lopsided matchup, and the Thunder still nearly lost, and it took an injury to cement it, So anything can happen in the finals, so you can never say it's a done deal. But it is very likely that we're in the semifinals, game 7, that is probably going to be essentially the true finals of the NBA for the season. So it's a pretty big deal. I'd kind of sworn off the NBA till the Thunder lose. But, I mean, it's now or never, right? It's now or never. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to watch it tomorrow. I'm excited to watch it tomorrow, but I might back out at the last second because I'm having deja vu. I'm like, did I learn my lesson? Because last year, I also really, really wanted the Thunder to lose. I refused to watch the playoffs till the Thunder lost because I hated them that much. Or sorry, I watched them versus the Nuggets, so that was a good series. And then once the Nuggets lost to the Thunder, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to watch, okay? So I didn't watch. Then it got to game 7 of the finals versus the Pacers, and I was like, all right, I have hope. Even though my brain knows that the Thunder are going to win this, I will step in, get ready to get hurt, and experience this, It's like gambling, right, without putting any money on it. It's gambling with your feelings, right? That's all you're really putting into it, your feelings, which is like, am I going to be really happy and, pumped and excited that I got to watch the villains lose in a game 7 on the biggest stage, right? Or am I setting myself up to basically watch a car crash where I come in with some small kernel of hope and then have to watch it be brutally ripped away from me over the course of like 15 flops by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whatever. I don't know. I've got to. My plan right now is to watch, but it feels like such deja vu of the Pacers last year. Spent the whole finals not watching the Thunder Pacers till finally got till game 7. I was like, okay, let me come in with some kernel of hope, and then I just put myself through torture because I had to watch the Thunder win. Same thing might happen here. So let's see. Dear Treviso, thanks to 2. My Wemby glaze surpasses my Blackbeard glaze easily. I believe Wembanyama is on his way to potentially being I think the only thing that would stop him from developing into the best player of all time, or the greatest player of all time, would be just with that size. Like, he's, 7'4", 7'6", whatever people say. With that size, you're more prone to injury, and like, can your body hold out that long? I think he's got a really solid shot at going down as the best player ever, like in the future when we're comparing like 5-year peaks or something like that. I feel like Wemby, like kind of similar to Shaq, but I wonder if he's going to be able to hold out longevity wise. So that's the one catch with Wembanyama. But yeah, Wembanyama, I think right now is maybe the best player in the NBA. I think Jokic still has an outside argument. I think we just need to see him on a totally different team and context. Because I've long believed that the Nuggets are frauds outside of Jokic, and that Jokic just makes the whole thing look better. But then Jokic didn't play that well for this playoffs, and really not that well last playoffs either. So it remains to be seen. Like, I want to see him in a different context before... I don't think he's the best player in the world definitively now. I think, like, I wouldn't give him that rank. But at the same time, like, how to explain this? There's like a 3-way situation with Wembanyama, Shai, and Jokic all in contention for best player in the world. You could argue that Jokic is just out of the equation now based on this playoffs. Maybe I'd be more cold on Jokic if I'd actually watched him lose. But I didn't even watch the NBA games, right? But Wembanyama, from what little I have tuned in a little bit just to watch, like, in retrospect, how the Thunder and Spurs play, like, post-game and everything. I think Wembanyama is, like, a little inconsistent, but his peaks are clearly the highest. So it's like, is he the best? I don't know. And then Shai's just bizarre, because on paper he should be the best, but he just clearly drops when he's not getting his foul calls. But at the same time, I remember watching him versus the Mavs a couple years ago against Luka, and he was just like, he didn't need the flops or the fouls. He was just untouchable from like automatic from mid range. That had me really worried for the Mavs. So I don't know. Like I think that there's stuff with all of that. Like yeah, all three have weird arguments. I don't know. Then Giannis and Luka are in the sidelines, so it's really hard to say. There's no clear best player right now. Talk about the chapter. Okay, back to the chapter. Back to the chapter. Yeah, the fact that Jokic got beat by this Wolves team takes him down from best player in the league. Yeah, I think it's kind of like the LeBron 2011 thing where it's like, even if it feels like based on all the previous stuff he's shown, he should be the best player. It's hard to really make that argument right now. My only sort of thing with Jokic is I sincerely believe and have believed for a long time that the Nuggets are not actually a good team. Jamal Murray's not a good second option. I've had a lot of beliefs about the Nuggets for years, so that's the only reason I'm kind of like holding out like a little bit for you. If Wemby shows a little bit more consistency, like he's not all over the place game to game, I'd just be like Wembanyama's the best player. It's kind of like he's like a Rocky sort of like I don't know, like this Rocky X factor, that's like a little up and down, but he's going to settle. He's 22, right? So the question is he, once he settles, and you assume that he's going to settle at his consistent high mark, right? Once he settles it and stops the rockiness, then he's just the best player. My question is he already there yet, or is it going to be another year or so? Shai, I thought I was ready to give him best player in the world, but then in the Lakers series, LeBron was a better player, and LeBron's 41. So I'm just like, okay, Shai's probably not the best player in the world. I don't know. All right, continuing on. Jack Winner 1000, thanks to 2. So Kuzan is Brooks' brother, I guess. I don't know, maybe. Maybe. Shai is not the best player in the world? Yeah, I just don't think so. Yeah, I just don't think so. All right, back to the chapter. Continues to talk about basketball. I just got sidetracked. Keep in mind, for anybody who is an NBA fan, right now it's like, this is the peak. Like, this is one of the most hyped, biggest playoff series we've had in years. And it's at game 7, so it's like the final showdown is about to happen tomorrow. So it's just hard to not talk about it a little bit, but I will do my best. Well, I will try. Let's get Streamlabs up to 50 real quick. So Kuzan is Brooks' brother. Yeah, I'm curious if we get some more. I don't know. Sometimes we think that Oda's going to connect these things or whatever, but, then it's not really a thing, so. Pool of Dead 3088, thanks for the 2. Elbath is Brooks' arc. Bumsop will get nothing. Yeah, maybe. That's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. I'm just kidding. I think Usopp will get something. I think he will get something before this is all said and done. I think we're getting something for him. I would not worry. Justin, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 43 months, man. What if Brook not only awakens his Devil Fruit, but also regains his ability to use Haki somehow? Could Shuri help when the flashback ends somehow? Could we see the man marked by flames in the flashback? Ooh, man marked by flames in the flashback is possible. Again, I think the man marked by flames is a God's Knight, so I think that it's entirely possible we see them in the flashback. Could Shuri help? I do think Gunko will be on the good guy's side when the flashback ends. Will Brook awaken his Devil Fruit? Yeah, it'd be nice to see Brook awaken his Devil Fruit. I haven't really thought about that. Oh god, what if his fruit is like the god of the dead or something like that? I don't know. Regains his ability to use Haki. Did Brook used to have the ability to use Haki? Yeah, Kuzan wouldn't be bored when Brook was 11 lol. Yeah. King Leuven is great. Yeah, okay, so I talk about this a little bit in the chapter review. King Leuven is solid, and I like that the relationship between Brook and Leuven is like bro rather than like father figure, so like big bro. I like that. It's a little bit different, but at the moment I can't help but feel like So it's one thing to say like this chapter was like a foundational sort of setup chapter, you know, for Brooke's backstory, but I'm not. I I think all the good ideas that Oda has for it are probably in the next set of chapters, because even though this is just the foundational, you know, first initial chapter of the backstory, um, it's very, very by the numbers by Oda standard for backstories. So I think almost everything that we got in this chapter was kind of like just Oda being like a little DJ and mixing together past backstory elements into this, you know? So there's not really anything super new. So like for example, when Kuma's backstory began, um, it was initially like it was right away a new sort of premise, right? Like we're watching Kuma basically from birth grow up a slave, right? So we hadn't really seen that sort of a storyline for a character before. Like born a slave, right? And then family, like parents as slaves, experiencing that, parents being killed, yada yada, then being put into the hunting competition as slaves, right? So that was all from like the first several pages of Kuma's flashback. So that right away is a very new premise. We haven't seen that in a One Piece flashback before. Similarly, just the last flashback, right? Like Loki. So Loki's flashback begins with like so both Harold and Loki have unique situations, right? So Harold with basically this story of a man who's the strongest on the ocean and who kind of learns to be pacifistic, right? So that's one thing. Again, even if it's not the most emotionally moving thing, it's new, right? Oda's doing something new. And then with Loki, like right away from birth, being abandoned by his mother, being off, tossed from the heavens into the underworld or whatever as a baby, like you know, that's a new sort of different slant. Like that's new stuff. We haven't seen that sort of thing. We haven't seen anything similar to Loki's birth in any other One Piece flashback, you know? So the thing I'm saying with Brooks flashback is that in this chapter, it did feel to me like a lot of elements that you've already seen in One Piece in one way, shape, or form, right? Like it's not exactly the same as any other backstory, but like the food scene that bonded Brook and Leuven, right? Like we've seen this many times in One Piece before, where a character, like going back to the very start of the series with Zoro and Rika, right? Or in Sanji's backstory, right? Like with the Germa backstory, right? Like kid character cooks some food that's bad, but then in order to show that this other older figure character is a good person, you have them eat the food and pretend to really like it and be thankful for it, right? It's just, it's a thing that Oda's done multiple times now. Like this is the third time or so he's done this in the story. Maybe there's another instance I'm forgetting. Um, you know, like that's something that's been done before. At this point, we've had several flashbacks where you've got the kid character get captured by some people. They get tied up, put somewhere else, and then you've got to like, you know, the other flashback figure comes in to save them, you know, and rescue them, and that's like a cool scene. Like these are not super new. Like there's obviously not. It's not exactly the same, but like you know, we're dealing with a princess and royal family again. Last chapter, people were saying, "Oh, another princess storyline." I was kind of defending it as like, "No, wait and see. This one feels different or whatever." But now when you're stacking it together with like a lot of other elements that are already very familiar, I still feel like the flashback as a whole is probably headed in totally new territory that we haven't seen before, right? Again, we already know that the Shuri story goes a route that's very, very dark, right? Like this princess is going to get framed for her father's murder. She's going to get enslaved by Emu. She's going to become his mindless puppet for the next 70 years. We know it's going to be bad. I'm just talking about this chapter specifically. I feel like this chapter specifically, every single page of the chapter kind of felt like, or every single beat of the chapter kind of felt like, yeah, this is like, you know, this is just like if you just ask somebody to throw together a bunch of One Piece standard backstory elements into a single chapter. Does that make sense? I'm not really trying to, what do you call? Again, I'm not trying to harsh the vibe of the backstory. I'm specifically talking about this chapter. So I think whatever Oda's got as the story in mind for this backstory is probably going to be cool, unique, etc., like we've seen with the last several backstories. And we already know where it's headed, so we know it's going to go really, really dark in a way that we haven't seen before. But I think the setup phase is basically, I don't think Oda put that much effort kind of like breaking any sort of new ground with the setup phase. I think he kind of just went back to the drawing board of like, how do I show Leuven's a good guy, even though he's a king and Brooke's like a poor person, you know? Like, how do I show he's a good guy? Okay, well, flip through, my handy dandy old reliable notebook. Chapter 3, Rika and Zoro, that scene. Or like what I did with Sanji and Isma. Like, just easy stuff. Food, done. Okay, how do I show Leuven really will stick up for Brooke and Brooke's bonded to him forever? Fucking Luffy Sabo, Or like fucking Vivi Koza and stuff. Like have the kid get kidnapped and then they come save him, right? Like, stuff like that. I don't know. This is just like 12 pages, add like 3 more with reveal and bam, yeah. Anyway, continuing on. Wait, let me catch the supers. Salsu1733 says the eating food stuff is kind of recycled. The funny thing about the eating food stuff is it's also like the lowest level of act that you can do to show that you that the character's a good character, you know what I mean? Like it's the most basic thing, which is just like we all in our lives have eaten some bad food before that somebody else prepared and pretended to like it. So that's like that's happened. It's not like but obviously Leuven later on went on to risk his life for Brooke and everything. I'm just saying that it's food obviously carries a lot of symbolic meaning in One Piece, so that's important, but sincerely, I think it's like the 4th time Oda's used this. Rika, Zoro, Sanji, no, 5th, right? Rika, Zoro, Sanji and his mom, then Sanji and Luffy in Whole Cake Island, right? Where Luffy eats the food that got all fucking mushed up and everything like that. And then Luffy Tama in Wano, the start of Wano, and now you got Brooke Leuven. Brooke's not even known for really making food, but I don't know. Like, that's the thing. It's just, I am prepared. If you listen to my stuff last week, right? Chapter review, discussion, etc. I am prepared for this backstory. Like, I'm ready for this backstory. If Oda wants to take 10 chapters to tell it, etc., I'm good with it as long as it's, makes sense and delivers and everything. But if we kind of get a chapter that's just one of the most generic starting chapters to a One Piece backstory ever, then I'm personally not going to feel it as much, I think the one moment I liked was, Brooke's thoughts about how singing helped him in the face of death, because that connects back to, obviously, Brooke's actual final death scene and everything like that. Avery CR, thanks to the 2. If Usopp gets Ragnar, does he powercliff Zoro and Sanji? I would say no, the same way that if like Nami getting Zeus didn't automatically powercliff all the rest. Like forget Zoro and Sanji, I don't think Nami getting Zeus made her powercliff even Robin and Frankie, I guess Ragnar's different in that Ragnar will just straight up fight for you. Zeus kind of does that too, but you can imagine that there's limits to it. Like, Zeus can't just win a fight on his own against a strong opponent for Nami. Like, it worked against Ulti, who was already kind of really beaten up and everything like that, but I'm pretty sure Nami would still lose. Like, if it was a serious duel, I'm pretty sure Nami would still lose to Robin, still lose to Frankie, etc., right? I guess with Ragnar, it's different, because then it's kind of just like... I guess here's how I would say it. If you're saying like if Usopp had to wield Ragnar as a hammer, if he had to wield Ragnar as a hammer and fight, right? Then I think Zoro and Sanji still beat him, But if Usopp's allowed to just let Ragnar do his own thing, then Usopp wins. I guess I would say that. Yeah, then I think he power clips Zoro and Sanji. Julian Reed, 6030, thanks to 2. Rocks is the little brother Brooke mentioned. Whoa, what? That would be great. There's no way. No. There's no way. Hold on. Let me look at this again. Have we gotten the TCB scanlations out? Okay, we just got TCB. Okay, I only read one OP scans. Okay. Let's see. By the way, I'm liking Adult Brook a lot. Like this version of Adult Brook. First of all, am I crazy? Or is Adult Brook kind of like a good looking dude? Like, you know what I mean? Like, back then, I feel like he didn't have to be such a sexual predator, you know? Like, he could have just, I'm sure he could have been good with and he was good at music, and he was the leader of the Kingsguard. Like, I don't know. Tiptio Treviso takes for the two. Brooks flashback shouldn't kill your excitement. I think the bigger thing is that, like, any sort of flashback when it first starts, tends to, like, because it's a, like, no matter what, a flashback is halting the story, right? It's halting whatever, like, usually you can assume that if the story is being told well, that we want to see what comes next, right? A flashback is inherently basically saying you do not get to see what happens next for quite some time, right? Especially in weekly manga release, it's, and with Oda's breaks, it's really saying like quite some time, like months and months, right? It's kind of like you're in the middle of a season of your favorite anime, and then it's suddenly like, okay, the season's going on hiatus for X amount of time or something, right? Obviously, a flashback's not the same thing because we're still getting more story, but it's not finding out what happens next, right? So it's not so much that it's Brooks' flashback as it's the fact that it is a flashback that's starting right here. You know, like, I would argue that even if the Loki flashback was starting right now, like let's say we stopped right this second and we cut to Loki being like, "Here's what happened in the castle like 14 years ago," and we start with like Harold was sailing around the seas, causing trouble or whatever. I think people would feel very similar, right? With Brook in particular, it being his flashback, I think I shouldn't keep emphasizing Brook's flashback. It's just the fact that it's a flashback in general, right? But I think Brook is such a minor character, even in the, like, among the Straw Hats, that it can feel like, okay, we've got literally the biggest duel in One Piece history happening right now, right? Like, this is the most high level battle we've ever had in One Piece, right? On screen. It's the most crazy high level duel ever between gods, right? And then we're cutting to the most minor Straw Hats backstory, which is why it's understandable why, even if it shouldn't kill your excitement, it could potentially like feel like, fuck, this is not what I was hoping would happen next. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. Candle called herself Luvin's devoted steel blade, the exact same title Gonko held in God Valley. Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I don't know what that is going to lead to necessarily, but I think there's a solid shot that she turns out to be a God's Knight or is recruited to the God's Knights or something. Deptio, thanks for the 2. It's been 7 to 6 years since the beginning of Wano. That's so crazy, man. I think Wano started... I think, from what I remember, I feel like Wano... Yeah, probably... I feel like Wano started 2019? Maybe? 2019, 2020? I don't know. Probably like 6-ish years, right? Jing Freaks! Brook loses his mentor / captains tragically every time. Yeah, that's true. Bad news for Luffy, huh? Magnus9450, thanks for the 10. Luffy equals Devil Fruit advancements and Haki. Zoro equals blade improvements in Haki. Sanji equals body enhancements in Haki. Oda wanted to have their own unique branch of powers in addition to Haki. That's an interesting take on it. That's a very interesting take on it. I guess the only thought I have is just that, like, with, like, how to explain this? Body enhancements and Haki are kind of the same thing. Armament Haki does what the exoskeleton does. So that's why we'll forever be confused why Oda went that route in, you know, in Wano, rather than just have Sanji improve his armament Haki. The stronger your armament Haki, the stronger your coding in general, the less you're, like, the more impervious to damage you are, you know? It's the same reason Kaido and Big Mom are so untouchable, or so unscratchable. Like, we all know that Big Mom's durability is due to Haki. Like, because the one time that she's only able to get scratched and such when she's like crying out in pain because of Mother Caramel's photo and everything like that, right? So like, we know that it's Haki related. There's just so much coding, Kaido, it's implied that it's also the scales, the dragon scales. Luffy implies that in Udon. But overall, that's what armament is. Like, it's just making your body really, really tough, Um, like Sabo talks about, like, when I've got armament Haki on, like, my hands become dragon claws, and so they can crush anything. Like, so that's the one thing. And similarly with Zoro, blade improvements plus Haki, again, they're kind of the same thing, right? Blade improvements and Haki. Are you saying, like, improving his sword? Is that what you're saying? I don't know. Because if you're talking about swordsmanship, it's kind of been shown since the time skip that improving swordsmanship basically just means improving Haki. Like, all of Zoro's improvements, swordsmanship-wise, pre-time skip, were, like, a little bit... How do I say? I guess they all turned out to be Haki over time. Like, against Mr. One, it turned out to be armament. Against Kaku, it turned out to be, Conquerors, right? Even with Ryuma, with getting the new blade, he got a black blade, which is, Haki. I think the one time he improved not through Haki was in Skypiea, where he's learning the ranged attacks, which are implied to not be, Haki or no Haki, right? And then post-time skip, all of Zoro's improvements have been Haki, or getting a new sword, so maybe referring to getting a new sword. Oh, did I miss one super? Hold on. Sorry, 1 second. Pool of Dead, 3088, thanks for the 5. If Usopp doesn't get anything this arc, how will it impact him in your Straw Hat ranking? Straw Hat ranking? I don't even know, like, how it would impact him in my Straw Hat rank. It would severely affect my view of Oda as a writer, I would say that. Because this is no longer... Like, fuck Usopp's ranking. Like, this might affect... I think realistically, it's going to take so much for me to drop One Piece from my favorite story. Because there's just too much wrapped up in there emotionally from childhood through adulthood, But, I don't even want to think about, like, that's the thing. I don't even want to think about the possibility of Usopp not getting something meaningful in Elbaf. I don't even want to think about it. Like, it's just so... That would be so egregious. It would be up there. The closest point of comparison you could think of is like, well, what if Luffy doesn't become Pirate King or find the One Piece or something? Or what if Zoro doesn't duel Mihawk? Like, it's not quite as bad as those things, but it's, or sorry, not Mihawk. Zoro might fight like S-Hawk or something, but Zoro not getting a duel for the world's strongest swordsman, right? It's not quite as bad as those things, but it would be just insane, because it's just not even worth talking about, Like, it's not even worth talking about. It's like a thing that's like, what if Luffy doesn't fight Blackbeard or something after so much setup? It's like, I'm not going to critique something that blasphemous unless it actually happens in the story, There's just too much that's been built into Usopp's storytelling tied to Elbaf for that not to happen. It would essentially be Oda sacrificing one of his core, most important characters in the story. But I doubt that would happen. Like, put it this way. Okay, people are saying Brooks flashback, etc. I view it the opposite. There's no chance that Oda's going to prioritize Brook over Usopp, considering Usopp is an infinitely more focused on character in the grand scheme of One Piece than Brook, right? So I think people are viewing it the opposite of how I view it, in the sense that, like, oh my god, Brook's getting so much stuff, that means Usopp's gonna get nothing. To me, it's just like, okay, if Oda's giving even Brook, like the fact that Oda's carving out time in Elbaf to give even Brook a storyline means that there's no chance that Oda's abandoning one of his 5 most important Straw Hats, Usopp, who this storyline was like built towards, you know? Like, does that make sense? Because it's I'd be worried about Usopp if Oda was like this arc just focusing on side character shit like Loki and Hajrudin or something like that, but creating a lot of story space for a Straw Hat doesn't make me worried about Oda giving the due attention to another Straw Hat. Does that make sense? Like, to me, if anything, this indicates that Oda's right, like, his focus is in the right place, which is like, I'm gonna give the Straw Hats focus. Brook can get his turn first, then Usopp, you know? That's all good, you know? Continuing on. Treble Akeem, thanks for the 2. Do you think we see Emu's base form? Shoot, I don't know. I feel like the base form, whatever that is, we might have to wait for the Void Century or something, because it's possible that he's kind of become this sort of shadowy figure, you know, after whatever surgery, immortality surgery or whatever was done on him, and then he can only turn into a combat form for some period of time. Fatingo, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 36 months, man. That's, holy shit, 3 years, thank you. I'm just happy that an underutilized character, especially as a part of the main cast, is getting something that makes him feel like an actual character. Yeah, I've long felt like Brook doesn't... I have long felt like Brook doesn't feel like a quote-unquote main character to me at quite as much as the other Straw Hats. Even compared to other minor ones like Frankie. I think part of it is that Oda's always written him as like kind of a caricature from his very introduction, from his whole opening arc. And it's very rare that we get moments of Brook, like, being emotionally vulnerable or human, right? And then just the design choice adds to that because he's a skeleton, not a human, so it adds another layer of feeling a little bit less than human. So I'm really liking this. I'm happy that we're getting this. I just, how do I explain this? I'm happy that we're getting this flashback, and I'm happy that we're getting to humanize Brook. I just wish 2 things, which is 1, Oda gave us 1 more chapter before going on break, because we don't have much to work with. And 2, I didn't find this chapter to be that, you know, that stand out in terms of Straw Hat backstories. Obviously, this is just the start of the backstory. I'm stressing that, but I'm just saying if I'm evaluating just this chapter, there's nothing really that makes this chapter feel distinct or unique as far as backstories go, you know? Tatio Treviso, thanks, man. Thanks for the 2. I like swordsmanship getting a bit more focus. I like that Brook got attached to the idea of being a swordsman at a young age. I don't know if we're gonna get any more details on swordsmanship here, because I mean, unless Oda changes things to I guess there's always, people have talked about this, but there is always the possibility that Brook was once like a crazy strong swordsman, and then becoming a skeleton really weakened him or whatever, right? So people have discussed that. Some people have talked about, you know, maybe he had Haki and lost it and everything. But while that's possible, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, because I kept reminding people last week that this is just a kingdom in the West Blue. Like, this is not even a Grand Line kingdom. So, like, by the end of pre-time skip, the Straw Hats were stronger than any of the Paradise Islands royal guards by like leaps and bounds, you know? So like, while Brook can probably become a strong swordsman here, right? Like, it's a very vast world, right? So being a strong swordsman doesn't necessarily mean that he'd be like a New World level swordsman or something like that, you know? Yeah. I think like following the Straw Hats' adventures has skewed people's perceptions to some degree of what constitutes strong in the grand scheme of things, you know? Like put it this way, right? Zoro in chapter 1, like Zoro as of chapter 1, chapter 2 was the strongest swordsman in essentially his entire quarter of the globe, right? Like, that entire quadrant of the planet, Zoro was the strongest swordsman in. That's like day one Zoro, right? So, you know what I mean? And like, Zoro gets tremendous glaze and gas throughout East Blue because he just is that far ahead of all other swordsmen in East Blue, right? Um, so that's just something to keep in mind. Obviously, West Blue is stronger than East Blue, but West Blue is still weaker than the Grand Line, and the Straw Hats were, obviously reached a very high level even by first half Grand Line standards over the course of time skip, right? So I'm just saying, like, there's nothing so far that indicates that Brook was secretly some, like, sword god in the past, Like, does that make sense? Julian Reed, thanks for the 2. Thoughts on Emu possibly being the first Seraphim? That would be insane, but I think that just doesn't follow, right? Because Vegapunk just created the Seraphim just now, right? I don't think Emu could be the first Seraphim. That's an interesting thought, but I don't know. Oddly, Brook has shown no desire to be a pirate yet. That's true. I forgot that was his dream. He mentioned that. That's a really good point, man. That's not mentioned anywhere. That is very interesting. When does this dream come about? When does this dream become a thing? That's a great point. Wait a sec, what the hell? So I'm looking at the last page. Kind of confused by... What the fuck? Looking at the last panel. Okay, so if you look at the last panel, I don't want to screen share here, just because it's dangerous to screen share when chapters first come out. If you look at the last panel, I'm straight up confused, okay? The final panel... Oh, is this two separate panels? It's two separate panels. Two separate panels, that's why. Okay, I thought it was all one panel of his face. It's a panel and then another panel. That's weird. Okay, look at the second to last panel. The second to last panel of Brook's eye tearing up, there's no eyeball, so it looks really weird. I don't know. That's a strange paneling choice by Oda. Tiptio, thanks to the 2-man. Morge references flashback older than me or chat. Morge references flashback older than me or chat. Morge references flashback. Oh shit. Did I lock the door? Hold on. Alright. 1 second, I'll be right back. Never mind. That was strange. Okay. What does that mean? Morge references fucking Alabasta flashbacks. I'm 21. Morge references fucking Alabasta flashbacks. Oh, that's funny. Julian Reed, thanks for the 5. The Ancient Kingdom tech was too advanced. The 20 Kings came together to turn the Neurona heir into a Seraphim to fight Joy Boy / the Ancient Kingdom. Oh, that's a very interesting idea. That's a really interesting idea, man. That's very interesting. But isn't it... Okay, yeah, that would be really cool if he's like a product of kings conniving together. That'd be really, really cool. Shit, that'd be really cool. That's a good ass theory. I like that one. Okay, what are jewels? I'm sick of this shit. I'm looking it up. Damian Wright thing. What are the jewels? Okay. Okay. What are jewels? Okay, cool, cool. I see. All right, I think I kind of understand them. I'd have to look at what they. Okay, and that's that little image. Okay, okay, I see. So, are you guys seeing jewels pop up on stream? Okay, it gives Gunko at least some personality to care about, so two not sucking God's Knights. I mean, I personally think that I imagine that the Gunko uh, storyline is going to be considered really good by the time everything is all said and done. Because I think like you can kind of guess how powerful a backstory is going to be to some degree by how by what we know of the Fallout, right? So if you look at like two of the commonly referenced saddest backstories in One Piece, right? Robin and Kuma, right? I think if you did a mass poll for favorite or saddest One Piece backstories, my guess is that Robin and Kuma's would probably take the cake, right? My guess is that they would win. I'm sure there's lots of votes for other things, but just straight up majority, I think those two would take up like the biggest pieces of the pie altogether. Okay, so let's think about that, right? Let's walk that back. With Robin, before we even got the flashback, we knew that everything that we knew about her was she had been hunted since she was 8 years old. Her whole island, her hometown, her civilization had been destroyed, and what do you call? And she was suicidal, right? Those are the three things we knew about Robin, right? Like she was a woman with no friends, abandoned by everybody, hunted by everyone since she was a child, entire civilization destroyed. We knew all of those things before we got the flashback. Hence, the flashback that actually showed how those things played out is obviously one of the saddest fucking flashbacks in One Piece. For me, my personal favorite, right? Saul notwithstanding, right? Kuma, the other flashback that nowadays is often referenced as arguably One Piece's best flashback. What do we know beforehand? We knew that Kuma has been we already saw Kuma today had been turned into a literal like mindless, brainless robot slave for celestial dragons to beat up and ride around Marijua, right? So based on that, we could extrapolate that, look, his flashback, like to get to that point where things are so bad, yeah, his flashback turned out to be one of the most brutal flashbacks ever, right? So you can kind of look at what the state of the character is in today and and that kind of gives you a pretty good idea of just how bad their flashback is ultimately going to be, right? So with that logic, look at Gunko, Shuri, however you want to call her, mindless puppet slave kept alive by Imu for the last 70 something years as just this servant with no autonomy, no free will, right? Just this toy this toy doll weapon that she's been turned into, right? And apparently she was framed for the death of her father. Okay, so we knew all that before the flashback started. So just the simple fact that we already know that her endpoint is one of the worst endpoints we've seen for a character, right? That tells us right away that this flashback is probably going to be one of the hardest hitting flashbacks ever, right? Very possibly comparable to just if you're comparing endpoints, yeah, it's very possibly comparable to the Kuma flashback, like a 70-year long like tenure of slavery, you know, with your brain erased. Essentially, what Kuma went through, it seems like the end of Kuma's flashback, where he gets his brain turned off and he's turned into a slave, right? It seems like Shuri basically experiences that as well, but for a 60, 70 year stint, right? Whereas Kuma, people don't like me saying this, but Kuma was actually only a slave for about 2 weeks. You know, a brainless slave for 2 weeks. He was a slave as a kid for a while, but like the brain turned off, right? Mindless puppet. That was about 2 weeks. I guess arguably a little bit more, 2, maybe 3 weeks or something like that. But because remember, for the 2-year time skip, he got to do what he wanted. That was still free will Kuma. So he still got to exercise his last act of free will. He didn't have to do anything for the Celestial Dragons. He just watched the boat, right? So he got to do his last wish for 2 years. If I were the Celestial Dragons, I'd be like, what the fuck? We signed up for a fucking, like, we wanted a mindless slave automaton robot, and you got us instead a statue that sits in front of this ship. The fucking Straw Hat Pirates ship for 2 years. Whatever, I guess we'll let him do that. I don't know. I don't know who okayed that. When you think about the logic behind it, I'm surprised Saturn was just like, cool. Where's Kuma? That fucking robot that I invested like years and years of research into. Vegapunk's like, don't worry. For the next several years, your investment is going to be watching the Straw Hat Pirates boat. And Saturn's like, all right, I had some nasty stuff I was going to do to him, but I guess that can wait. I don't know. Anyway, if you think about it for a second, I think it's funny. Eric says, I think a few months. I don't think it's been I don't think Fishman Island to Wano is a few, or I don't think Fishman Island to Egghead is a few months. No, it's not even Egghead, right? It's because they get him back at the Reverie, right? So I don't think Fishman Island to the Reverie is a few months. It's because, let's think about it, right? So they leave Fishman Island, right? Most of it's dependent on how long it takes to get from Zoe to Whole Cake. But I think it's only a few days from Zoe to Whole Cake, right? I think it's a couple weeks. The travel time from Zoe to Whole Cake, is the travel time from Zoe to Whole Cake a few weeks? Do we have a... I don't think the Straw Hats could have... No, because they're fucking dying from Nami's cooking after a few days, right? 2 weeks to get to Whole Cake? Is it 2 weeks to get to Whole Cake? They were chilling in Wano for several weeks, weren't they? Yeah, but the Reverie starts before that. If it's 2 weeks to get to Whole Cake, then... So let's see. So one day Fishman Island, the next day is Punk Hazard, right? Then I think the next day is Dressrosa, right? So that's 3 days. Even if we give it, okay, 3 days there, then what is it to Zoe? How long is it to Zoe? Do we have a timeline on that? My estimate was like Kuma was a slave to the Celestial Dragons for 2 weeks. It's still really bad being a slave for any period of time, right? And obviously he was a slave in childhood, right? But I'm just saying that the whole sacrifice of turning off his brain by Vegapunk, so now he's a mindless robot, he basically signed up to do that for 2 weeks in the grand scheme. Like, there was no real sort of... it was nowhere near as tragic as was initially implied, you know? Is it 10 days to Zoe? Where are people pulling these numbers? I think even if you give it like a week to Zoe and 2 weeks from Zoe to Whole Cake, right? Let's say a week to Zoe, 2 weeks from Zoe to Whole Cake. Well, then that changes the estimate. I initially said Kuma was a slave for 2 weeks. Now it's 3 weeks. It's definitely not months, Eric. They weren't sailing around for months. Tiptio, thanks for the 2. You think Candle becomes a Holy Knight and kills Reuven? I think there's something fishy with Candle. Either she's already a Holy Knight to investigate Reuven or some shit, or... Well, I mean, it would be a really long con, right? But CP9 did it, so I don't know. There's something off about Candle, though, it feels like. Maybe there's nothing off about Candle, and we're just looking for things to be off, because it's kind of like that thing where, like, when the plot is too peaceful, you look for things to be off, right? It's kind of like, I mean, I got on board the idea that Angie the Giant was a traitor or something because it was like, okay, Elbaf seems to be really doing well, right? Like the first 20 chapters of Elbaf are fucking super peaceful, right? So it's like we're looking around, we're like, there's got to be something. What's wrong with this island? Is there something in Heaven Realm? Is there why did Louis Arnott said don't stay too long? What's going on? There's something wrong. What's going on here? Angie, she must be a traitor. Something's off here. And it's just like, nah, it's been pretty much fine since Harold died. It's gonna be bad now that the God's Knights are back, but Elbaf's been in good state for a long time. Retro Records 28, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 44 months, man. Hey Morge, great chapter. Already better than half of the straw at flashbacks, in my opinion. The tragedy of Brooke unfolds. Also, Candle is a God's Knight. Yeah, people are saying Candle is a God's Knight. I do agree that there's something there, but I don't think it's better than half of the straw at flashbacks by any means. I mean, okay, let's see. It's better than Zoro's, because every straw at flashback is better than Zoro's. I think that's about it. I don't think it's better than half the straw at flashbacks. Civ still hates Andrew with his whole heart. Dressrosa to Zoe to Whole Cake Island to Egghead to Elbaf, says Eric. No, dude, because Kuma was rescued by the revolutionaries at Reverie. By the time Whole Cake ends, Kuma is in the process of being freed. So it's just whatever time frame it was from So Kuma was a slave. Okay, he was a slave to the Celestial Dragons as a child. That was obviously terrible. That sounds so dismissive as a way to say it, but I'm just establishing facts, right? The period of time where the big sacrifice happened, right? That's the thing I kind of fixate on, which is like, okay, the big sacrifice is Kuma's going to turn off his free will, literally. Like, he's going to become a robot and become a robot, mindless slave to the Celestial Dragons, right? The worst possible fate. My argument is that's a few weeks max, right? And then he's taken out of it, right? So it's not like, it's nowhere near what Gunko kind of goes through, you know? Taptio, thanks for the 2. More Wano announces deadline is 1 week away. Technically, it's my defense of Wano video, but I hear you. I hear you. Don't worry. Maybe Tom with a great theory. Maybe Louis Arnott said not to stay long in Elbaf because he's racist. That is actually a solid theory. Maybe he was like, wow, what a fucking beautiful island. I love this place, the trees, the scenery. Oh my god, there's fucking giants here. All right, put that shit down in my journal. Better not stay too long. 1 week to Zoe, chapter 803 has a time jump box. Okay, so let's say 1 week to Zoe. Let's pretend another 2 weeks to Whole Cake. So Kuma basically 3 weeks a Celestial Dragon Slave, right? 3 weeks a Celestial Dragon Slave. That's pretty bad. Like, any period of time as a slave is obviously terrible. 3 weeks is obviously awful. But you can't really compare to Gunko, right? So Gunko's had it the worst out of any character that we know of so far, right? So that's why I imagine that the backstory is going to be, one of the best ones that we got. Diptio says, you said analysis would come before defense. No, I said that the analysis counts as a defense. First, I said I would try to get the analysis out before the defense. As that became less feasible, I said the analysis counts as the defense because I will have sections defending the Wano analysis or defending Wano in there. And you guys said, okay, we have stream evidence to prove it. You guys were on board. Candle married to Shamrock? What a twist. Dude saw an oddly shaped giant instead of a giant goddess and said, better not stay too long. Morge, did you see the dawn effect on Candle this chapter? What does that mean? Like, just the dawn sound effect? I'm very curious about the direction with Candle. Eric thinks the two we slave scaling now. I think this was like a roundabout way of me trying to defend that this flashback is gonna be really emotional and hard hitting and tragic the further we get into it. Because my point was simply that, and then it turned into slave scaling essentially, right? My point is simply that I think so far One Piece flashbacks, how sad and tragic and memorable they are, you can kind of guess that in advance based on the character's endpoint in the modern day, right? So you can see how bad the character situation is in the modern day, and you can kind of guess at how bad their flashback is, you know? Like, for example, just look at the first set of Straw Hats, right? Zoro, Usopp, Sanji, Nami, right? Um, you know, uh, most would say that Nami has had the worst of it the last 10 years compared to them. Right? And that's kind of reflected. You can kind of guess that as you. And Nami has the most powerful flashback in East Blue, right? That you can kind of guess that just based on where the characters are in the modern day, right? Zoro, sure, he's tied up in the moment, like on a cross, but that's just like that's a brand new thing. Like that just happened the last couple days, right? Beyond that, Zoro is what? The most respected warrior in the entire East Blue, right? So, you know, the flashback that we get for Zoro is not exactly like the most heartbreaking thing in the world, right? Usopp has a sad little flashback, but like for the most part, Usopp's life seems solid. Sanji is like the sous chef at the best restaurant in East Blue, right? He's got a solidly sad flashback, but you know, Zeph's still there. He didn't fucking lose Zeph, you know? Nami is the one where it's stressed throughout East Blue, like she's going through it, right? Like she's got a situation going on. Something's really like sad. She's fucking crying about shit. She's traumatized by some stuff. She's always on the run, always trying to get money, etc. And what do you know? She's got the saddest and longest flashback out of everyone, right? So I think kind of like, you know, we look at Chopper and Robin, two phenomenal flashbacks. Both of them are fucking outcasts when we first meet them, like absolute outcasts of society. Chopper, at the very least, has hero, or not hero, Kureha, but that's it. Robin has no one, and everyone's trying to hunt her and capture her and throw her in, and her whole civilization died. Yada yada. She's suicidal, and what do you know? Those two characters have really tragic flashbacks, right? So kind of just all, you know, Brook's a fucking skeleton when we meet him, right? And most people would say that the flashback we got in Thriller Bark was fucking sad, right? So, again, let's hold out for Gunko and Shuri, because obviously the flashback is kind of just setting up the basic shit right now, but we know that her end point of her story is like one of the darkest fates that any character in One Piece ever seems to have had. So it's gonna be a good flashback, you know? It's gonna be a good flashback. Tom, what are you trying to get off? What are you trying to say? Go Scorched Earth, the analysis can't defend Wano at all. Go Scorched Earth, the analysis can't defend Wano. No, it's got to defend Wano. So I got to be fair, because like looking through Wano, one, if you go full Scorched Earth, then people, it doesn't feel like a good faith, whatever, right? So like, in the writing process, there's so like how do I explain? So in the writing process, I usually start sections with like so like there's notes, you compress the notes to fit certain sections, and then usually I write the initial section very just like as like with my feelings in it as well. And then I go back through it and then I comb through and I'm like I'm getting in my feels here. Let's be uh let's be more objective as you can be, right? Analytical, etc. Try and be as fair as possible, yada yada. You know, so it's still very critical, but Wano has parts that it does well. It does have themes and ideas that I wouldn't say it ever does. I don't think there's any themes in Wano that I think are done well, but you know, I have sections that talk about them. You know, Fisher Tiger Top One Slave, says Eric. Uh, Fisher Tiger Top One Slave. I don't know. Was Fisher Tiger? I think Fisher Tiger is a in terms of what he did for other slaves, sure, he's a top 1 slave, you know? Take a look at the 2026 Elbaf bingo cards. Yeah, we can look at that. That's fun. Let's see. I'm very curious. Let me pull that up. Julian Reed, thanks for the 2. Candle's Dawn Effect is the same one only Mihawk has. Really? Oh, that's why I saw comments talking about Candle and Mihawk. Shit. Is Mihawk Candle's child? Only Mihawk gets the Dawn Effect? That's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Elbaf 2026. One Piece The Knights of God? What is that? What is this? I'm seeing a trailer. What the fuck? What is this shit? What the fuck is happening? I'm sorry. Okay, no. I gotta stop that before I get a copyright strike. But there's a trailer for the fucking God. How out of touch is Toei? Does it think we want a trailer for Songers? Does it think that Shamrock stays in the arc? Why is there a trailer for an episode? What the fuck? Or is it for an episode, or is it just like a trailer for like... Ah, shit. Maybe it's because this core of One Piece is so uneventful. Because, like, this is the section of Elbaf where nothing happens, right? So maybe they feel like they really gotta amp up and hype people up about the God's Knights or something. How's there a trailer for the God's Knights? Yes, we do. VA's announced you're out of touch, Unk. It's not even for an episode, it's for the next... Oh, it's for the next batch? So it's definitely because nothing really happens this batch, right? Again, I like the opening sections of Elbaf, but it's not exciting anime, you know, in that sense, right? It's the setup phase of the arc, right? So I guess it says something that they had to make a trailer for the next batch, even though the villains that come in the next batch kind of suck. Let me find the bingo card. Elbaf, creating a One Piece 2026 bingo. Is that the same as an Elbaf bingo? I think we did an Elbaf bingo, right? Maybe we didn't do an 2020s. This is only 4 months ago. I'd like to give it some more time before we look back. I mean, I can pull it up now just to show. All right, hold on. Going to be an Usopp matchup coming up. Okay, here, 1 second. My audio might cut out for a second. So let's see. Which audio is this? Okay, I gotta add that. Testing. Hello. All right, you guys can probably hear me. Let me see what's the video I need to add. Okay. This is, what is this? Okay. Okay. It's too big. There we go. All right. So looking at this bingo card, you guys can hear me okay, right? Looking at this bingo card, Zoran, so this hasn't happened yet. This may or may not ever happen. No. This has happened. Jinbei's been useless. Can you guys hear me? You guys can hear me, right? Yeah. Okay. No, 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 no. Maybe? No, 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 no. What does this say? Revolutionaries confirmed attacking Marijua? No, 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 no. Yes! Emu has a brief flashback, right? Emu has a brief. Okay, so we got two. So we kind of got to hope for this row, right? So this row is the hope, right? If we get, yeah, Emu did. He did get a little bit of a flashback, right? Am I crazy? He did. Yeah. So we've got yeah. So Jinbei being useless and New Straw. Jinbei being useless. Emu has a brief flashback. So if Luffy gets some character development, okay, no, actually, I think this row is very doable. Okay, check this out. Check this out. Okay, this row is very doable, very very doable row. All right. The only hard sell is the new Straw Hat or column, right? Only hard sell is new Straw Hat officially joins. Okay. Jinbei useless, check. Emu brief flashback, check. Luffy getting character development. Call me crazy, but that should not be unreasonable. That should not be unreasonable, right? Main character getting character development. Who would have thought, right? After, I don't even know. I don't think Luffy's developed as a character since Marineford, personally. Jinbei, Emu, Luffy gets character development. I think that's doable. Revolutionaries confirmed attacking Marijua. I think that's in the cards. I think that's definitely in the cards. The hard one is New Straw Hat officially joins, right? That's the hard one. That's the one where I don't know, like who, like fucking what? Maybe Bonnie or something. Maybe fucking Shuri, Gunko. I don't know. Interesting. It's doable. The God's Knights got aura. Yeah, if the anime gives them aura, it felt like they had aura for a bit. Like Shamrock, I felt like, so interestingly, Shamrock, I never felt like Shamrock really had aura in his reveal personally, because like it was just like we've seen Shanks' it's just like a nicer dressed version of Shanks, so it's kind of like what is it? Like it's more like a surprise type thing, like shit, like we got this dude now, you know. Shamrock having aura, I don't know. Gunko did not feel like she had aura to me. But then she fucked up the Straw Hats, so it's kind of like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise, right? Sommers, interestingly enough, initially, he shows up without clothes and everything like that, but then once he's dressed up, a lot of people were excited for Sommers. It's easy to forget, but Sommers was like a very highly anticipated God's Knight, because he's very highly decorated, he's got all of his medals and shit like that. So, Sommers had some hype behind him. Yeah. Come on, that intro panel of Shamrock was definitely aura farming. What is aura farming then? Like, is it just a character being shown? Like, you know when Kaido drops in front of Kid, Kid, Hawkins, Apu, right? Like, that panel feels like it has aura. In fact, I feel like you could show that panel to anybody, like, who's not even a One Piece fan, and they'd be like, oh shit, this guy has aura. Like, this is aura farming, right? I feel like if you just show the Shamrock panel, it's just Shamrock, you know? Yeah, part of it is like, Shamrock was... This has got nothing to do with how strong... I feel like people are going to get upset because it's like, oh my god, Shamrock's going to be so strong, etc. He might be really strong. I don't know. We'll see. He's probably strong. He's probably very strong, right? But I'm just saying it. I don't think... Like, what is aura? Like, is the panel of Shanks and Shamrock just walking side by side? Is that aura farming? Like, what makes it aura farming? I sincerely don't remember. If you could even go back to like the introductions, right? Like when we get Loki's introduction, right? Loki's introduction, it feels like that's like there's aura around that man, right? Shamrock's introduced in a very straightforward way. It's just a panel of him, and there's a chained up Loki who's half dead there, right? I don't know. Aura farming is nothing happened. Yeah. Tom says, Mord, you're just desensitized because you predicted him. I mean, maybe, but I sincerely feel like if you go back to the chapter itself, I don't think, like, if you look at reactions and stuff, I don't think people were like, oh my god, this man has so much aura or anything like that. Probably because the design is the same as a character we already know, Shanks, right? Um, there's not really any sort of, like, he's presented in, I think, as straightforward a manner you could possibly present a character. Like, he's not really presented any different than Gunko is, you know? It's just him standing. Why is that aura? How's that aura farming? Like, I think aura farming requires something a little bit more. Like, you remember when Garling? Now we all think of Garling as a joke, but when Garling walked into the Gorosei's room and sat down in the chair and was like, let's decide the matters of the world or whatever the fuck, right? That felt like aura farming, you know? There's actual gravitas being given to what's happening. I don't think just showing a character design is aura farming, especially when the character design is not really an exceptional character design. It's a duplicate character design, you know? Gunko felt more special than him. I didn't think either of them really aura farmed, personally, when they were introduced. This probably isn't for more just chat, but somebody explained the big Mihawk connection this chapter. Was it the Oda box design that people are connecting? I don't know. I mean, maybe this is Mihawk's mom. Maybe this is Mihawk's mom. He's got a swordswoman mom. Wait, but then that means that Mihawk is related to Shuri, right? If this was the case. So Gunko is Mihawk's sister? Is that right? I'm so lost. More, I think people are talking about the panel of him flying on Gunko's bird. Okay, I guess. I also remember that was him saying we've got to hide and conceal our presences, so I didn't interpret that as aura farming, and then he threw his sword at, like, Loki, who was already part dead. So I don't know. Maybe just different views of what aura farming is. Like, I think there's got to be something to the presentation. Like, you remember when Mihawk was because we're talking about Mihawk, right? When Mihawk was first introduced, right? How is he introduced? He's introduced coming in on a fucking, like, little coffin raft with candles, like green candles, terrifying design, legs crossed, head down. That panel feels like aura farming, especially because he's coming through the Grand Line where, like, we're well aware that you need, like, a really good boat and navigation, etc. But this man's just casually sailing around. Like, that feel, like, you can show that panel, I think, to anybody, and they'd be like, oh, this dude's aura farming, right? Shamrock's it's just introduced. It's the most basic introduction possible. Like, simple example, I don't think the first time we see Shanks and Shanks' design is Shanks aura farming, it's just Shanks' design. When Shanks shows up in Marineford and is like, I'm here to end the war, that feels like aura farming. You get what I'm saying? Like, I didn't think that Shamrock's introduction really had that much weight behind it. I think it was more so surprise rather than weight. Anyway, that's enough. Aura farming not equal to aura, though. OMG, stop saying that. Okay, well, I don't think Shamrock showed aura either. I think it's just a dude. New X7, 22, thanks for the 2. Congrats on the engagement. Thank you very much. Also using your factor code. Thank you. That's awesome. I appreciate that. If you ever want to support, then consider trying out Factor and using the code. it does help quite a bit. It's only aura farming because he looks like Shanks. Yeah, I think that's kind of fair. Shanks could have beaten everyone at Marineford alone. So I'll say this. If it turns out that Shanks did straight up beat Loki, then that statement is true. Mihawk becomes the question mark then, because then it's like, well, Mihawk didn't even feel like fighting Shanks, so we can remove Mihawk from the equation. Yeah, if Shanks straight up beat Loki and is straight up stronger than Loki, then for sure he's beating everyone at Marineford by himself. Because Loki can 1000% defeat everyone at Marineford by himself. That's like no exaggeration either. Because like a single Thunderheim from Loki basically nukes Marineford, and there's not really anything anybody can do about it. It wouldn't like kill everyone. I'm sure the admirals would somewhat survive, and then what? They get Ragnar diffed? I don't know. Armin982, thanks for the 5. Longtime listener from Australia. Keep up the good work, Morge. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not going to make any conclusions about Shanks until we actually get some details about what happened. Prophet Glenn says Shanks didn't straight up beat Loki if he couldn't beat his father 2v1. I think people tend to assume that that was like a weaker version of Shanks. Obviously, that version of Shanks is nowhere close to Loki. Ragnar freezing Akainu, funny as fuck. I wonder if Ragnar could freeze out Kiji. It's crazy how we power clipped the old gen with Loki. I mean, it makes sense because like the modern day characters ultimately have to be stronger, right? For the final war to function, to overthrow Emu, etc. So it does ultimately make sense. Actual Diamond says, Morge, what does Shanks need to do to have you Shanks greater than Mihawk again? I just want to see him fight. Like, if he fights using a sword exclusively, then as long as he's fighting using a sword exclusively, I'll have Mihawk above him, you know? That's all. Unless we're, like, straight up shown something very blatant, which, like, if we're... okay, so, for example, if we're shown something like, I don't know, Mihawk tries to fight, these are just hypotheticals, right? If Mihawk tries to fight... what's an example? Mihawk tries to fight whoever, Warcury, let's say. These are just pretend hypotheticals, right? Mihawk tries to fight Warcury or something and then loses. And then we see Shanks fight Warcury and Shanks wins, right? Then, even if Shanks is only using a sword, you'd have to kind of just be like, okay, looks like Shanks is stronger than Mihawk. Like, if we're shown, like, plain straight up that Shanks is just stronger than Mihawk, right? With clear comparisons, then it's just like, then you go into the territory of like, okay, well then what the fuck is Oda thinking calling Mihawk the strongest swordsman? It just doesn't make sense, right? But unless we're shown something like that, then as long as Shanks is only shown using a sword to fight, I'm okay with saying Mihawk above Shanks until we see otherwise. I don't know. I still mentally feel like there will be something that suggests Shanks is stronger by the end, but unless we're actually shown that, I'm not going to make that claim, you know? That's all. Check Twitter after stream. Meek6173, thanks for the 5. Hope you enjoyed the chapter. Favorite moment? Uh, favorite moment was probably Brook. I like the chapter fine. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't really care for the chapter too much. It was again fine. I didn't think it's a bad chapter. I just don't think it's um how do I say this? I've explained this throughout the beginning of the stream. It's not so much that I think it's like a bad chapter, and it's not so much that I even think that like, oh no, you can't have what do you call um uh it's not like I think like, oh, every chapter of a backstory needs to be exciting or something like that, right? My only beef with the chapter is that it feels like it just recycles a lot of. I'm all good with slow paced backstories that build, right? But this chapter feels very recycled in terms of Oda's ideas, right? Like it feels like several past backstory elements just being reused for this chapter. Um, so that's why I'm not like there. It feels like there's very little new. Like there's very few new ideas here to discuss. More, do you have Mihawk rated than Shanks at the moment? Look, in my heart of hearts, I still personally believe Shanks is stronger than Mihawk, but I am not going to make that claim anymore because I don't have grounds to stand on. Does that make sense? So I still think that there's a solid possibility that Oda reveals new levels of Haki that even Roger didn't have, that Shanks might have, okay? I still believe that's a solid possibility, but that's ultimately pure speculation, right? Pure speculation, I don't want to go into arguments based off of pure speculation, right? So so my simple stance is basically as long as Shanks is only shown using fighting with a sword, uh, Mihawk should be above him. Otherwise, Zora's whole dream is stupid, you know? Anders says, new ideas. This is One Piece we're talking about. LMAO Goda. Come on, man. That's not fair. I think Kuma's backstory had a lot of new ideas, things we hadn't seen before in backstories, even like everything that happened with Ginny, right? I don't like the way Kuma's backstory seems to be like potentially being neutered from its like it's having its consequences undone. But Kuma's backstory, a lot of new ideas, I think. Loki's backstory, I think, had new ideas, you know? I think this backstory just feels by the numbers. I was gonna say something, I'm not gonna say it. Demian writes that Shanks' better portrayal, it's just a fact. I agree. Shanks has been shown in much better light every time he's on screen than Mihawk, you know? I think every time Shanks has been put on screen, it's been in some way hyping him up, right? Whereas I think the most Mihawk was ever shown in terms of a hype portrayal, right, was his East Blue introduction. By the way, for the majority of pre-time skip, I preferred Mihawk over Shanks. Silly reason, I like Mihawk's design better, and we didn't really know the two characters. I think over the course of post-time skip, it's sort of shifted. But even then, though, I didn't have Mihawk over Shanks, but I thought that they were basically even. Yeah. I'll say it, but like, okay, I'll say it, but I'll frame it as precisely as I can. I believe that this is going to be one of the One Piece's best backstories, right? And I understand that this chapter had to be I believe this is going to be one of One Piece's best backstories. I understand that this chapter had to be sort of setting the foundation of the rest of Brook's backstories. The only thing I feel like is that in this chapter, a lot of the ideas feel like if you fed like AI the story of One Piece and told it to come up with some of the like a standard backstory start, because it features so many of Oda's previously used ideas throughout other backstories and just kind of recycled and rolled into a package, you know, between the character eats food made by the child and pretends that it's good, which we've seen like 50 different times. Kid is captured in the backstory, and the other character has to come in and save them, thereby bonding them forever, like we've seen a bunch of times in backstories, right? Princess, royal family storyline, right? Like, it feels kind of like if you fed, AI, write me a little One Piece backstory start, and it's like, okay, well, based on everything you've done before in One Piece, here's the good elements, we'll put it in, you know? That's basically it. But I believe that this is just the start. I think Oda's set up to have some of his best ideas play out over the course of this backstory, just because we know how dark Shuri's story actually gets, right? So that's like a pretty harsh critique of this chapter, but it's not even to say it's bad. It's just that it does feel very like it's not even recycling one idea. It feels like Oda recycled like several different of his past ideas and threw it into this little chapter just to establish the start of Brook's backstory. That's why I don't find it interesting. That's all. Megazord says, I guess there's only so many variations of these backstories, but I disagree. Like, again, Loki's backstory, like, the very first opening chapter of Loki's, not, well, there was the Herald backstory, but then once Loki's part started, like, the very first opening chapter of, like, Loki being born and opening his eyes and his mom abandoning him as a 1-day-old infant and tossing him off the Sun Realm into hell. And then Loki climbing back up the tree with tears in his eyes as a 1-day-old infant. That's like a crazy start to a backstory that we've never had before in One Piece, right? Kuma's backstory, the backstory before this, like I talked about this earlier. That backstory, the very first chapter, featured Kuma being born into slavery, essentially, and then watching both of his parents get killed as slaves while dreaming of Nika, right? And then being put into this hunting competition for celestial dragons where they're going to hunt down and kill slaves for sport, right? That all happens in the first like 5-6 pages of his backstory, right? So and those are things that we've never seen before in One Piece, right? So you know, I think that's why I'm just like a little bit like, okay, this chapter was Oda not really putting new ideas forward, which is rare. But again, it's just the start of his backstory, right? Do I think Mihawk is a former Holy Knight? That would be crazy, but maybe. I mean, I just don't know when it would have happened, because we saw him at Roger's execution. Shanks becomes a Holy Knight. I wonder if they have duels there. I don't know. It feels like Oda made this chapter in a rush because he went to South Africa for the live action. That's very possible. I'm sure he's saving the juice for this backstory for the later chapters. Reflexy2228. Thanks for being a Supernova member for 38 months, man. Probability of Elbaf ending around chapter 1250-ish. I think that my initial prediction was 1200. But it's, give or take a few chapters, right? Because Oda doesn't usually end them at the exact mark. Like, Whole Cake ends at around 902, Dressrosa ends like 801, 802 or something like that. Fishman Island ends around 653, 654. So it's not these exact benchmarks, but I do feel like within 5 chapters, Elbaf would end around chapter 1200-ish, within 5 chapters. Now I don't know, because if Brook's backstory, the pace of Brook's backstory seems like it's going to be a slow one. So we could be in this till 1190, right? And then that's only 10 chapters to wrap the rest of Elbaf. Elbaf could be a 100-chapter long arc and end around where Egghead ended. So like at the 1125 mark. I don't know. Anders is reminded that Morge would throw 1-day-old infant Loki off a cliff as well. Well, hey, I wouldn't do that. But I'm saying like his eyes were scary. He looked like not even that. He was born looking like the devil, Like you would think twice. Like if your child is born and it's like, oh shit, did I just accidentally did we just give birth to Satan? Like what's the protocol here? Right? Like if you gave birth to Satan, are you supposed to raise him? Because I'm just saying, if it looks literally like Satan, like when Loki's born, he looks very, very much like a baby Satan. So it's just like, what do we is it morally correct even to raise a baby Satan? I don't know. Why do you think Shanks dueled Mihawk? It seems pretty out of character for Shanks to start fights himself. Maybe Shanks in his younger days was different. I remember Shanks in his younger days would argue with Buggy over the fucking poles, like North Pole, South Pole. Tom Tom says, Morge, make sure your fiance is aware of this take before you all get married. So what's funny is that sometimes she hears, I often have to go clarify, she sometimes hears random things that I'm ranting about on stream. And then she's like, if she understands bits of it, she'll ask me about it later. And I'm like, it's just for, I have to clarify, it's just for entertainment, okay? I should clarify that for you guys too. Most of the hot things that I say on this stream, hot take things on the stream or whatever, most of it is just for entertainment, okay? Even my hate for law is greatly exaggerated. I don't go to bed at night thinking about how much I hate law, all right? Although, if you get me talking about him enough, I will get upset. But that's just a reminder for everybody in chat as well, okay? It's largely for entertainment. Okay? But she does ask me stuff. Have I discussed the Mihawk Candles link? I don't know. She should watch Morge Unleashed. I think I showed her a video from that channel once, but then I didn't show her the rest of the channel or something like that. I don't know. Crest Jatara says, missed my super... Oh, I'm sorry, man. Hold on. Oh, I got a couple. So first Crest Jatara, and then I got you, Henchme. Crest Jatara, thanks for the 5, man. Love how the prince is just Frank Reynolds. Higher class individual who is bored of the pampered lifestyle and wants to experience squalor. Yeah, that's a good way to put him. Henchme987, thanks for the 5. I was swamped at work, so I didn't read the chapter, but more importantly than Bone Daddy's trauma, who's the better ship with Shanks, Buggy or Mihawk? I don't think either, really. If I had to pick one, I think probably Mihawk, right? Droove the one, thanks for the 2. What are ways that Luffy could get future power-ups? Honestly, I think just a big Conqueror's Haki Bloom is the main big thing. Because beyond that, I feel like I'll always maintain that I don't think Gear 5 inherently needs more power-ups. I think it's just like... It's kind of like... You remember Luffy in East Blue? When he first starts showing us what he can do with his rubber abilities and his moves are simple, like Gomu Pistol or Gomu Gomu Bazooka. Remember when Gomu Gomu Bazooka was Luffy's big finisher? That was his big finisher for a while, you know? You knew that Luffy was pulling out the stops when he's using Bazooka. So, you know, like, Luffy's using simple moves, Pistol, Bazooka, Whip, stuff like that. Then as things progress, you know, then he starts doing more large-scale attacks, like Gomu Gomu Storm and stuff like that, right? All the way up to when he finally gets gears, right? So I kind of feel like Gear 5th is like that, where, like, right now Luffy just unlocked a brand new fighting style. And I imagine Luffy can do a lot with it, but I don't know if he needs, a new form. I think it's just going to see him, quote-unquote, stretching its capabilities more and more, right? Like, I would not be surprised if by the time we're at the final battle, Luffy's able to do, like, Bajrangun Gatling or something like that, you know? So, I don't think he needs a new power-up for Gear 5, necessarily. Like, I don't think he needs a Gear 6, personally. I think that the point is that the world is now, you know, very unbound for him, so he can do all sorts of crazy things. So I think we'll just see crazier and crazier applications of Gear 5 as Luffy gets more and more in tune with the power. So I think that'll be one thing, and then I think just upping the Conqueror's Haki is the other big thing. Let's get stream likes up to 100 real quick. Scopper is the only one who should know about the consequences of staying too long in Elbaf. He's the human who stayed there the longest, 20 years. At the end of the arc, he might tell us what it is. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. How is Storm even different from Gatling? Storm uses Luffy's... By the way, I felt that way too at first when I was a kid watching the anime, and I was so excited to see how Luffy defeats Crocodile. Nowadays, I love it because, like, I love the music, the dramatic weight, all of that. But when I was a kid, I still enjoyed it, but I found myself wishing that he had a different move to do it. Because the difference is basically Storm involves Luffy, like, filling himself up with air first and then launching himself. So the idea is that it's a more forceful attack because it's like basically a Gomu Gomu Gatling that's powered by that's powered by great propulsion, right? So it's like Gomu Gomu Gatling on steroids, basically, right? So I liked that idea, but I still felt like it was kind of like Oda was stuck in a difficult spot in the sense that without introducing gears, right? He had kind of topped out the limits of what level of physical force Luffy could output, right? With any single attack, like bazooka, axe, like in terms of like singular like finisher moves, Gomu Gomu Bazooka or Gomu Gomu no Axe are pretty much the best Luffy had. So like the next route Oda could go was basically, okay, well, what if it's like just a shit ton of attacks all at once? We already had Gatling, which is essentially that. So Oda's like, okay, well, what if it's like a souped up version of Gatling? This is just me kind of speculating on the thought process, right? What if it's a souped up version of Gatling where it's like a lot more force behind it because Luffy's like launching himself up, right? Or down. We've seen different variations of it. So, that's essentially what Gomu Gomu Storm is. Yeah. Taptio says, yeah, and he spins too. Yeah. Taptio says, check my Parking submissions, Morge. Oh, heads up. Parking podcast submissions are now open. So definitely go check those out. Let me make sure Taptio's is in. Oh, fuck. Yeah, definitely go check out the Parking podcast submissions. Okay, so as a heads up, here's what's happening, by the way. Because there's other things that are going on right now. So basically, this Monday, there is no stream. No stream this Monday. There will be a stream next Friday, okay? There is a video next Tuesday as well, as usual, okay? Tuesday the 9th will be a break week for me. There will be no video Tuesday the 9th. I'm sure you guys will survive. There's no chapter or anything either, so taking a little break. And then everything's back to normal after that. After that, everything back to normal. So next week is mostly the same. You guys get the video on Tuesday, written that, recorded, everything like that. So video coming out Tuesday, stream Friday. There's just no stream next Monday, okay? Following week, there's no video on Tuesday. So that's a little break that I'm having to take. And then after that, everything comes out same as usual. So hope that's okay, everybody. Let me check. Taptio was mentioning. Yeah, but Pirate King podcast, all of that's going to be recorded same as usual. So nothing changes there. So definitely get your submissions in during this time. Let's see. Taptio, you're the first person in for the Pirate King podcast just 3 minutes ago. Okay, yeah, yours is there. Don't worry about it, man. Tom says, y'all remember Morge's theory of there being 5 different forms of Gear 5 for strength, speed, durability, speed, and elasticity? Hey, what we got was way better. Gear 5 is like, I think like that theory was based on just like, okay, Luffy showing these different variations. What would Gear 5 be? Okay, like what if you combined all of them? It was taking essentially what we know of what Luffy can do and trying to combine it all together into a single concept, right? So like what could the possible evolution be? Okay, like everything we know he can do, combine it. But in actuality, Gear 5 was basically like going like taking everything we knew and like ripping it up and like being like, okay, now there's no rules, essentially. That's the concept, right? Like we're going way outside the box. So I'm very happy with what we got with Gear 5. I think it would have been cool in retrospect just to for for us to get a couple more because like with Gear 4th we essentially get Boundman, Snake Man, and Tankman we only see once. So I think that was like a cool concept that was sort of starting to develop, which was like, okay, Luffy's got a form which seems like it's for power, one for speed, one for defense, I guess. Yeah, I guess, I mean, Oda filled out the concept, power, speed, defense. Um, yeah, I viewed Boundman as kind of being like a combination of everything, because Boundman's good for speed. Like, Boundman's really fast. It was so fast Doflamingo couldn't even follow it. And it's good for defense, like Doflamingo couldn't damage it. But it's just not as good at speed or as good as defense as Snake Man or Tank Man, respectively. Right? So I always thought that there was going to be a power. I thought that Boundman was kind of like his all-around form, and then Snake Man was a speed form, Tank Man was the defense form, and then we'd finally see a power form or something. But as it turns out, those were the three concepts. Which Monday is it? Next Monday. Okay, so to be clear, next Monday, the 1st, there's no stream. So next Monday, the 1st, there's no stream. The next day, Tuesday, the 2nd, there is a video. There is a video. And next Friday, the 5th, we've got a stream as usual. Rogers Hockey will bloom. It's 10x worse than the raid will feel. I feel like Rogers Hockey will bloom isn't that... That one's disappointing for me just because it was like... One, it does narratively make sense that Roger should get a Hockey Bloom in the God Valley battle, right? Like, I think Roger and Garp getting a Hockey Bloom, I think it just narratively follows. That's... We're literally told that those are the fights where you get Hockey Bloom. So I thought that was fine. It's sending Emu home, I was just like... Well, I don't think that's crazy either, because just last arc, Joy Boy's Hockey kind of had a similar effect. And Joy Boy's Hockey was compared to Shanks's. So this was back when I was just like, well, there's no way that Shanks's Hockey is above Roger's, because up till very recently in the story, like, it's easy to forget, but it's more of a recent thing that now there's rumblings of, like, Shanks being stronger than Roger. If you go back 10 years and did polls or whatever, or even 4 or 5 years or something, right? There's nobody, like, even the biggest Shanks fans aren't really arguing that he's above Roger. Like, maybe some small, like, maybe Eric Terlata or something, but, like, there's a very, very small subsect of Shanks fans that would ever argue that he was above Roger, right? So the going assumption was just that Roger was, like, the benchmark for the One Piece world. And he really was until Emu and Joy Boy and such were introduced. So I think it was kind of like my last... That video is kind of like my last... Like... sort of send-off, I guess you could say, like, for the old way of looking at things, which was kind of like, yeah, at the top of the world, like Roger was that dude. He's kind of the guy that most people assumed had the best hockey in the story, etc., yada yada. So that was kind of like, and we've lived in the shadow of Roger's story for like the better part of the series, right? It's really only in the modern day, like last couple hundred chapters, that things have started to go beyond Roger into bigger picture stuff, right? So that video is kind of like, yeah, it's like Roger sending back Emu, that's crazy. But at the same time, it's like, well, the Roger that was kind of built up, you know? He sounded like the dude that had the best hockey on the ocean. We mostly assumed that he was better hockey than Shanks, having better hockey than Shanks, and Shanks' hockey got compared to Joy Boy's. So, you know, and if Roger was ever going to have a Hockey Bloom, wouldn't it be at this God Valley battle that we were all so excited to see him in? So, I get that it was like, so how do I say this? There's some theories that, like, people get on, they're like, how to explain? There's some theories that I put out and I'm like, if people get on my case for this being wrong, totally understandable. It's a reach, you know? But then there's other theories where I'm like, no, this seems so, like, this would be good. Like, this would be good, or this seems so solid, or like, there's some theories where I'm like genuinely surprised, where like, even if it doesn't come true, I'm like, I'm surprised that people are like viewing it as a very hot take. Does that make sense? Like, there's theories that I put out that I'm like, oh, I know this is a hot take, right? Then there's theories that I put out, I'm like, oh, I wouldn't even expect this to really be like a hot take, you know? But then people are like, the fact that that one still gets brought up, I'm like, wait, what? This is like Gold Roger we're talking about. Like, if you go back 5 years, Roger was like the dude, you know? Like, the guy that Kaido is gassing up, etc. So I'm like, I don't know. That's what surprises me. It's just, I guess, the shift in the image of what Roger represents, I think, is kind of reflective of like people's views on that take being insane. Does that make sense? Sorry, JR182, thanks for the 5. Is Zabuza the Naruto version of Crocodile? Inconsistent, first bad, who should have been stronger, but due to plot is weaker than they should have been? Thoughts? Question mark. Um, I'm not a big enough Naruto person to recall exactly, but like, didn't Zabuza just lost to Kakashi, right? And Kakashi is, you know, like an infamous ninja in his own right. So I don't think that's really the same. Crocodile's just like the only real, like, Crocodile's like a big question. I don't know what Oda wanted to do. I'll always maintain that I think that like people get on, like, people are like One Piece power scaling this or that, etc. I genuinely think that One Piece power scaling is pretty consistent overall. Like, pretty consistent. Like, you don't see like like I don't get where the notion comes from that One Piece power scaling is off or bad, because like you're not gonna see fucking Yonko commander type characters defeating admiral characters or Yonko commanders, right? Like, you know, like we understand kind of the hierarchy, right? We like, there's a reason that people have, I think One Piece power scaling is actually pretty good, because you kind of have tiers that people talk about, and it's like, oh yeah, this character seems like they're Toby Roppo tier, and we all kind of know what that means, right? This character probably falls in Yonko Commander tier. We all kind of know what that means. These characters fall into Yonko First Mate tier. We all kind of know what that means. These characters fall into Admiral or Yonko tier. We all kind of know what that means. You know, like, the only, like, I don't know where this notion of like One Piece being really inconsistent with power scaling comes from, because I personally don't see it that often, you know? I think in like little skirmishes, there might be something that doesn't quite make sense, you know, like, or like incidents like, why couldn't Blackbeard capture Beppo or something like that, right? Like, so I think there's moments, but for the most part, it's like when Law rolls up to fight Blackbeard, we all know Blackbeard's gonna win, and Blackbeard won, right? When Kid rolls up to fight Shanks, we all know Shanks is gonna win, and Shanks won. He won easier than we expected, right? So, but that just tells us we didn't know Shanks' full strength at that point, right? So I don't really get that take. However, Crocodile is the one character that I think you could argue is wildly like a significant anomaly, in that I don't know what Oda wanted for the character, in the sense that there's just no level of like excuses or like anything that makes sense for him losing the Alabasta Luffy, and then people treating him with like people treating him like an actual like threat in Marineford, or like a player in Marineford. Like, he should be treated like an ant, just like Luffy, you know? And one thing people fucking forget is at the start of Marineford, Luffy kind of shows that he would still kick Crocodile's ass. For some reason, everyone forgets this, but the very first thing that Luffy does in Marineford, the very first thing, is speed blitz. Like, Crocodile tries to go take out Whitebeard, Luffy speed blitzes him, and is just like, no, you're not doing that, right? Right off the bat, it's just like, okay, even if Luffy and Alabasta, that him beating Crocodile, then like it seems like he got kind of lucky or whatever and just wore Crocodile down. Now he's got gear second. He's clearly faster than Crocodile. He might actually legitimately be able to give Crocodile these hands right now at Marineford. That's what it feels like, okay? So Oda does that at the start of Marineford, but then as Marineford progresses, you have so many characters talking to Luffy like he's nothing, like he's an ant. But then anytime Crocodile's on screen, it's like Doflamingo's like, Crocodile, we should team up. It's like, why the fuck do you, like, fucking Baby 5 should be able to fuck this dude up, you know? Like, it's weird. I don't know. Prophet Glutton 90 says, none of us expected Law to do that well against Blackbeard, though. I I don't know why, because Blackbeard has never been shown to be, but why? Because last we were told was that Blackbeard beat Marco, right? That's his only feat. I think a lot of people assumed, like, Oda never did anything inconsistent. A lot of people assumed that Blackbeard should now be at the level of Kaido and Big Mom or something like that, but Oda never suggests that to be the case, right? So that's more of a thing where, like, readers are just saying, no, Blackbeard should be there. But Oda made it clear that the last thing that Blackbeard did was beat Marco. Like, that was Blackbeard's biggest win, right? He had a big showdown with Marco over the course of the time skip a year ago, and he beat Marco. And after that, he started being called a Yonko, right? He didn't beat a fucking admiral. He didn't beat a Yonko or anything like that. You know, that's pretty much it. You know, there's nothing that is odd about this. I don't know. Tom says current Blackbeard is weaker than current Aokiji. Fight me. I mean, I personally think that there's a good shot that that's true, but you could argue it either way. Ender Anami says, how can you say that with a straight face when the majority of the series you have to assume that characters aren't fully trying for arbitrary reasons in order to justify their lack of adequate feats law? Because, so I get what you're saying there. I think that the tricky thing is with One Piece, so there's a difference, I think, with characters having very inconsistent feats and inconsistent power scaling versus characters just not being shown that much of what they can do, right? So I think that's where One Piece gets this reputation for having poor power scaling. Because, so think about it like this. So one thing I've noticed is that if you ask like 10 different people to make like their top 30 lists, the various sections of the list are actually going to look pretty similar, right? There might be some outlier, like somebody might have Sabo beyond the first mate group and rather in the admiral group or something like that, right? Or somebody might have Zoro beyond the first mate group and in the admiral group. But for the most part, the further we've gone in the story, like things kind of coalesce. So like you will see, like if you ask people to make a list, you will see some combination of like Zoro, Law, Kid, Yamato, Sabo, what do you call Marco, Sanji, King, etc. You will see some combination of them, you know, like towards the bottom of the list, right? And it's the further up you go that you will see more disagreements. But that's because the further up you go, generally those are the characters that we've seen fewer and fewer fights of, you know? Like, we have not yet seen a clean fight between, someone like Shanks versus an admiral from start to finish. Or, like, a clean fight of, like, Mihawk versus someone like an admiral from start to finish. Or, like, a clean fight from Fujitora against, you know, a top-tier character from start to finish. Does that make sense? So, generally, what Oda likes to do is if he has stronger characters, he either shows them only in brief clashes against other strong characters, or he shows them fighting weaker characters, right? Like, Kaido has a ton of feats because Oda fed him a bunch of weaker characters, right? Big Mom, same thing, you know? Like, so that's kind of... It's not so much that One Piece has inconsistent power scaling, it's just that the further up the list you go, Oda likes to save his stronger characters for later and later in the story, right? So with characters that are in the commander range or first mate range or like lower level Yonko officers, Oda's happy to show more and more of their fights. And as like if you kind of track, like as the New World progresses, we start to get a clearer idea of the hierarchy, you know? Like if you go back in towards the beginning of the New World, a lot of people were like, Doflamingo, he might be as strong as someone like Marco or something like that, you know? You will see a lot of takes like that. As the story progresses, well, we start fighting characters like Doflamingo's level, and then we start fighting commanders like Cracker, Katakuri, and so we start to understand better how these characters stack up against one another, and we get a better idea of like, okay, Jack, King, Queen, stuff like that. We get a better idea of where the supernova fall, and so over time, people's lists start to look more similar when you're looking at the lower end of things, because we're kind of working our way up. Oda still wants to save Shanks. He still wants to save Dragon. He still wants to save Mihawk, right? So those characters we don't see in action as much. He still wants to save showing the admirals going all out, right? So he still wants to save those, right? So it's just a lack of information rather than inconsistency. Does that make sense? So just by necessity of Oda wanting to save these characters, he puts them in lots of situations where they either have to hold back or they have to not do everything they can or whatever, because he wants to save the top echelon of things for later on in the story. But if you follow how the main plot has been progressing, by the end of Wano, for pretty much like all first mate level characters down, people had similar lists, you know? Like, people generally understood, like, the exact nitty-gritty ranking might be different. Like, somebody might think, like, Zoro's above Law, someone might think Law's above Zoro. But, like, once you go through a full arc of, like, showings and fights and stuff, yeah, like, you get a pretty clear idea of which characters fall in the commander range or the first mate range or whatever, and which characters are probably still just shy of admirals, etc., you know? Like, I'll always say this, it is not, in the long run, it is not going to be possible for One Piece to have bad power scaling. Why? Because it's, like, the claim that Oda doesn't care about power scaling is fucking hilarious. This man is more obsessed with ranking than any other shonen manga out there. Period. Every single organization you face, like the Straw Hats face, is fucking ranked from top to bottom. They're all fucking ranked. You can't, like, does that make sense? The only reason there's still question marks about the power scaling is because we haven't gotten to the big fighters yet, you know? But by the end of the story, we're going to see who fights the weakest Gorosei, right? We're going to see who gets to fight Jupiter. We're going to see who gets to fight Mars. We're going to see who gets to fight Venus Jura. We're going to get to see who fights Warkari. We'll know from top to bottom a quick little ladder, right? We'll get to see which characters get to fight the admirals, which characters are fighting fucking Holy Knights, you know? We'll see. You know how we fucking got through the Beast Pirates battle? We saw who fought the Tobiropo and then who fought the Calamities, and the Calamities are ranked for us Jack, Queen, King. It's pretty fucking straightforward. You know, like, Oda does a ranking. Like, you go see one arc back, the Big Mom Pirates, right? They're all fucking ranked. You got your sweet commanders in order: Katakuri, Smoothie, Cracker. Then you got the lower ones, right? Doflamingo Pirates, who fights Seats, who fights the lower officers. He's always ranking them. It's rare. Like, what villain groups does Oda not rank? Moria's crew? I think that's it. Skypiea priests? Oda fucking invented the concept of Doriki and never used it again just to make sure that we understood the ranking of CP9. Like, he ranks all the groups. You look at the Yonko crews, we know the rankings. Shanks, Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, Yasa. You know? Like, it's the most simple shit. He ranks everything. He likes ranking. The man likes ranking a lot. The only question marks we still have, and I know I keep harping on it, but it's because it's just a stupid take. The only question marks we have are because we haven't seen certain groups. Like, he likes to save. Saving and being inconsistent are two different things, right? Once we get to the final war and we get to see who Ben Beckman matches up with or who Lucky Roo matches up with or whatever, we get an idea of more, like, okay, who are first mate level characters, who are commander level characters, right? When we get to see who the admirals match up with, then we get an idea of that, you know? Just, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah, I know the preset of ranking. I thought I said the percentages. Ohm 0, Shura 3, Satri 10, Gadatsu 50. Yeah, the only things people are confused, like, anytime there's confusion, right, it's just because we need more information, you know? So, like, people are like, wait, how did Shanks defeat Loki, and now Loki's fighting Emu, but then the old gen should be stronger than Shanks? Like, that just means that we actually need to get further in the story and see what Shanks can do, right? Or get further in the story and get some clarification on these sort of things, right? But those aren't inconsistencies. That's just like, an inconsistency would be like, if like, I don't know. So, like, let's say Sanji was struggling with Doflamingo, and then he goes out and just beats Queen without any power-up. That would be an inconsistency, but that doesn't really happen, you know? So, like, I don't really know what I think Oda's pretty damn consistent, honestly, with these sort of things. Like, he's consistent to the point that we literally saw, like, just track Luffy's journey, right? Luffy's journey, it's so clean throughout the time skip. It's not inconsistent in the slightest, you know? Struggles with Doflamingo at first, but in Gear 4th, he's as strong or stronger, right? Then we get to Whole Cake Island. He, even Gear 4th now, struggles against Cracker. You know, he needs some help. So even in Gear 4th, he's like struggling against the third commander. And then, therefore, by the time he's on Katakuri, a first mate, Luffy's basically out of his league, and he has to get his first power-up. Cool. He gets a power-up against Katakuri, first mate. Next arc, we are on to Wano. Now Luffy's not fighting any first mates or subordinates. He fights Kaido, the Yonko, and loses right away. Does some training, comes back. He's stronger. He does better against Kaido, but it's not like a done deal. You know? Gets knocked out. He needs a power-up. Conquers Haki. Okay, now he keeps up somewhat better with Kaido. Can split the sky, etc. Then gets Gear 5th, and now finally he's able to put Kaido to bed. Obviously with some other shenanigans involved, etc. Right? But Gear 5th Luffy didn't cleanly beat Kaido, right? Kaido was injured, etc., right? It's still kind of up in the air exactly how that fight would go down again. Therefore, next arc, you put Luffy against Kizaru. It's like, is Luffy, like, definitively as strong as Kaido or whatever? No, probably not. Just yet. Therefore, against Kizaru, it's, like, also a bit more up in the air. How did the fight exactly play out, right? Like, this is not... Where's the inconsistency here? The only inconsistency would be, like, if you believed that Kaido is, like, 20 times stronger than Kizaru, and then you're like, well, now this doesn't add up, but that's not something that's... We're never told that in the story, so that's just, you know? To me, that brings me back to the Blackbeard and Law point, which is like, well, we didn't expect Blackbeard to struggle so much with Law. It's like, but Oda never told you that Blackbeard is way stronger than... Like, Oda never suggested that Blackbeard's as strong as, like, Shanks or Kaido or Big Mom, you know? Most Blackbeard's ever done is beat a first mate. I don't know. All right, everybody. All right. We are going to call it here. Thank you all for tuning in. Yeah. Thanks all for tuning in. And just a reminder, no Monday stream, but we will have a stream next Friday, and next Tuesday's video will come out as usual. So with that, I will talk to you all later.